The impossible assessment. The quantum hall of the Galactic Consortium Academy stretched before Maya Chen like an ocean of crystalline light. Thousands of students from across known space occupied their designated evaluation platforms, each being representing the intellectual pinnacle of their respective species. Avians with neural processors, crystalline entities whose very structures stored quantum calculations, nine-dimensional thought weavers. The greatest minds the galaxy had to offer. And then there was Maya. She adjusted her standard-issue environmental suit, trying not to feel self-conscious about its simplicity compared to the biotechnological wonders adorning her peers. At 23 years old, she was not just the only human in the academy. She was the last exchange student Earth would ever send. After decades of lackluster performance in the annual assessments, the Galactic Consortium had kindly but firmly suggested that perhaps humans should focus on their other qualities. This was Earth's final chance to prove its species deserved a place among the intellectual elite. No pressure. Participant 4261, please proceed to your assessment platform, announced a melodic voice that seemed to originate from everywhere and nowhere. Maya straightened her shoulders and stepped forward. The platform hummed to life as she approached, hovering a few centimeters off the ground. Several nearby students from the Erixian collective, beings of pure neural energy contained in exoskeletons, turned their sensory arrays toward her with what she interpreted as amusement. The primitive arrives, one of them transmitted, not bothering to use a private frequency. Let us observe how long it takes to recognize its inadequacy. Maya ignored the comment. She'd endured 3 years of such thinly veiled derision at the academy. Today wasn't about winning their respect. It was about solving the unsolvable. All participants, prepare for the 93rd Annual Unsolvable Challenge. The disembodied voice announced. As tradition dictates, this assessment has no known solution. Your performance will be evaluated based on approach, methodology, and proximity to theoretical completion. Begin in 3 universal time units. The air above Maya's platform shimmered, coalescing into a 3-dimensional projection space. Her heart raced. The unsolvable challenge was legendary, a puzzle so complex that no student in nearly a century had successfully completed it. Many believed it was intentionally designed to be impossible, a lesson in humility for the galaxy's brightest minds. 2 universal time units. Maya closed her eyes briefly, recalling the words of her grandmother, a mathematician who had encouraged her application to the academy against all odds. The universe speaks in patterns, little one. When you cannot see the solution, look for the pattern. 1 universal time unit. She opened her eyes, centering herself. Around her, thousands of brilliant minds prepared their cognitive algorithms, neural interfaces, and computational augmentations. Begin. The projection space exploded with data, a swirling, shifting tapestry of symbols, equations, and multi-dimensional constructs that twisted through both space and time. The assessment appeared different to each species, calibrated to their perceptual frameworks, but fundamentally the same problem. For Maya, it manifested as an enormous hypercube filled with pulsing, interconnected nodes of varying intensities. She heard gasps and murmurs ripple through the hall. This year's challenge seemed particularly daunting. By the 9 moons, whispered a tentacled Vorgin to her right. It's a Type 7 logic labyrinth. No one's ever navigated beyond the 3rd tier. Maya's hands hovered over her interface controls. Where to begin? The hypercube rotated slowly, revealing new configurations with each turn. The nodes flashed in seemingly random patterns, though Maya knew better. True randomness rarely existed in these challenges. 2 hours in, she had made minimal progress. Around her, the hall buzzed with the sounds of intense concentration, the high-pitched frequencies of Erixian cognitive processes, the low rumble of Vorgin problem-solving vocalization, the crystalline chimes of Zith-K mental recalibration. Maya had managed to identify certain nodal relationships, but nothing approaching a cohesive solution. Sweat beaded on her forehead despite the environmental suit's temperature regulation. The hypercube had grown more complex rather than less, sprouting new dimensional offshoots with each attempted solution path. By the third hour, some participants had already withdrawn, their platforms descending to the floor in the universal sign of concession. The unsolvable was living up to its name. Maya fought back frustration. Her approach wasn't working. The Academy taught problem-solving from the complex to the simple. Start with all variables and eliminate until a solution emerged. But humans had often worked in reverse. Find the simplest pattern and build outward. Something about the pulsing nodes tugged at her memory. The patterns, the way they interacted across dimensional planes. Suddenly, Maya froze, her hands suspended above the interface as realization dawned. "Oh my God," she whispered. "It can't be that simple." She rubbed her eyes and looked again. The hypercube spun slowly, its nodes blinking in that not-quite-random rhythm. If she mentally flattened the dimensional layers, collapsed the space-time variables, and viewed the challenge as a two-dimensional system, it was a puzzle. An old Earth puzzle. Maya almost laughed out loud. The most advanced minds in the galaxy were struggling with what was essentially a multi-dimensional version of a centuries-old human pattern-matching game. The unsolvable challenge wasn't impossible. It was just being approached with too much complexity. With newfound determination, Maya began to reconfigure her interface. She needed to translate the hypercube into its simplest form. The assessment system allowed participants to manipulate their perceptual framework, a concession to the diverse cognitive structures of galactic species. Interface, collapse dimensional representation to basic pattern matrix, she commanded. A warning flashed. Chaotion. Requested simplification. While removing 99.7% of data structure. Proceed. Proceed. Maya confirmed. The swirling hypercube shuddered, then collapsed. The spectacular light show of interconnected nodal pathways vanished, replaced by a grid. A simple, elegant grid of cells with various symbols occupying some spaces, while others remained empty. Maya stared in disbelief. She had been right. Beneath all the dimensional complexity, beyond the quantum calculations and temporal variables, the core of the challenge was a pattern completion puzzle. The rules were suddenly obvious. Each row, column, and section needed to contain all possible values without repetition. Around her, other students continued to manipulate complex multidimensional algorithms, adding layer upon layer of computation to their solutions. They were fighting the challenge on its terms, attempting to match complexity with complexity. But Maya saw the truth now. The unsolvable wasn't testing raw computational power or neural processing speed. It was testing something far more fundamental, the ability to recognize simplicity within complexity. Her fingers flew across the interface, mapping the simplified grid. Where others saw chaos, she now saw order. Where they saw impossibility, she saw a pattern waiting to be completed. It was exhilarating. The 6th hour approached. Traditionally, when most participants withdrew from the challenge, nearly half the assessment platforms had already descended to the floor. The Arixian collective near Maya vibrated with frustration, their neural energy patterns becoming erratic. "This exceeds standard complexity by 43.6%, one of them announced. "We calculate a 0.3% probability of solution." Maya didn't respond. She was deep in the rhythm of the puzzle now, placing symbols methodically, checking each section for completeness. The simplified version still required extraordinary concentration. It was a vast grid with thousands of cells, but the principles were manageable. As the 7th hour began, a hush fell over the quantum hall. The chief evaluator, an ancient Zithka whose crystalline form had witnessed 87 previous unsolvable challenges, drifted toward the center of the hall. This was unusual. Evaluators typically remained in their observation chambers until the assessment concluded. "Attention participants." The chief evaluator's harmonic voice resonated through the hall. "Our monitoring systems have detected an anomaly. One participant appears to be utilizing an unknown approach, that our algorithms cannot classify. Maya's heart skipped a beat. Were they referring to her? Participant 4261. Your methodology is being flagged for special observation. All sensory arrays in the vicinity swivel toward Maya. The remaining participants, even those on the verge of withdrawal, turned to stare at the human whose assessment platform now glowed with a distinct blue light, marking her for observation. The chief evaluator hovered closer, multifaceted eyes, analyzing Maya's simplified interface grid. Explain your approach, participant 4261, the Zithka demanded. Maya hesitated, suddenly aware of how absurd her explanation might sound to these advanced beings. But she had nothing to lose. I recognize that beneath the dimensional complexity, the challenge follows the pattern of an ancient Earth puzzle, she explained. By simplifying the representation, the solution becomes manageable. The chief evaluator's crystalline structure refracted light in a pattern indicating deep skepticism. You claim to have simplified the unsolvable, not simplified the challenge itself, Maya clarified. Just how I'm viewing it. The complexity is still there, but the pattern is clearer when viewed from a different perspective. Murmurs rippled through the hall. Some participants abandoned their own work entirely to observe this unexpected development. The Eryxian collective nearest Maya emitted frequencies of disbelief and dismissal. Impossible, one transmitted. The primitive lacks even basic neural augmentation. Its approach must be fundamentally flawed. But Maya was beyond caring about their opinions now. She returned to her grid, placing symbols with increasing confidence. Each correct placement revealed new possibilities, narrowing the options for the remaining cells. The 8th hour arrived. Then the 9th. More platforms descended as participants conceded defeat. Yet Maya remained, moving steadily through her simplified grid. The blue observation light continued to illuminate her work, drawing ongoing attention from the evaluators and remaining participants. As the 10th hour approached, the traditional conclusion of the unsolvable challenge, Maya's hands began to tremble. Not from fatigue, but from realization. She was going to finish. She was actually going to complete the supposedly impossible assessment. With trembling fingers, she placed the final symbol in her grid. For a moment, nothing happened. Then her interface shimmered, the simplified grid expanding back into the hypercube, but now fully resolved, each node pulsing in perfect harmony, each dimensional pathway flowing seamlessly into the next. The quantum hall fell silent. Maya Chen, the last human exchange student the Galactic Consortium Academy would ever see, had just accomplished the impossible. And as the hypercube spun in completed perfection above her platform, she realized that this was only the beginning. Revolution through simplicity. The quantum hall erupted. Thousands of voices, some verbal, others telepathic, still others expressed through light patterns or electromagnetic pulses, created a cacophony of disbelief and wonder. Maya stood motionless, her completed solution rotating majestically above her platform, its intricate patterns now flowing in perfect harmony. Verification required. The chief evaluator announced, their crystalline form vibrating with an emotion Maya couldn't identify. All evaluators to primary assessment chamber immediately. The blue observation lights surrounding Maya intensified. The remaining participants, now less than a third of the original number, stared at her with various expressions of shock, disbelief, and in some cases, what appeared to be outrage. Impossible, repeated the Eryxian collective, their neural patterns becoming increasingly erratic. The human must have accessed prohibited assistance technologies. Maya ignored the accusation. Her focus remained on the hypercube, watching as secondary evaluation systems began methodically testing her solution, golden light tracing each nodal connection, verifying each dimensional relationship. As the verification continued, Maya's thoughts drifted to how she'd arrived at this moment. Not just her 3 grueling years at the academy, but the lifetime of experiences that had prepared her to see patterns where others saw only chaos. She remembered sitting with her grandmother at the kitchen table, age 7, frustrated to tears by a puzzle book. "I can't do it, Nanai," she had complained. "It's too hard." Her grandmother, hands wrinkled but steady, had placed a weathered wooden box on the table between them. Inside were countless small wooden pieces, each carved with strange symbols. "This puzzle is older than me," her grandmother had explained. "It was created in ancient China, long before computers or even modern mathematics. The game has traveled through centuries because it holds a great secret." "What secret?" young Maya had asked, momentarily forgetting her frustration. "That complexity is often an illusion," her grandmother replied, arranging the pieces. "The universe presents itself as chaos, but beneath it all are simple patterns. Finding them is our greatest human gift." The memory faded as the chief evaluator approached Maya's platform once more. The verification process had concluded, golden light fading from the completed hypercube. Participant 4261. The chief evaluator's harmonics resonated with a tone Maya had never heard before. "The solution has been verified as correct." A new wave of exclamations swept through the hall. Several evaluation officers hovered near the chief, their crystalline forms vibrating with what Maya now recognized as agitation. "This is unprecedented," continued the chief evaluator. "In 93 standard cycles, no participant has ever completed the unsolvable challenge. The implications must be considered." Maya finally found her voice. "May I ask a question, evaluator?" The crystalline being rotated slightly, focusing its multifaceted eyes on her. "You may." "Why is it called unsolvable if it has a solution?" The question hung in the air, seemingly simple yet cutting to the heart of something profound. The chief evaluator's crystalline structure refracted light in complex patterns before responding. "The designation unsolvable refers not to mathematical impossibility, but to cognitive approach," they explained carefully. "The challenge is designed to exceed the analytical frameworks of known species. Your method was unanticipated." Maya considered this. "You mean no one thought to simplify the problem?" "Simplification is considered regression," one of the junior evaluators interjected, their tone conveying disapproval. "Advanced cognitive species evolve toward complexity, not away from it." Maya couldn't help but smile. "On Earth, we have a saying. Sometimes you can't see the forest for the trees. Sometimes complexity obscures the underlying pattern." The evaluators conferred among themselves, their crystalline structures chiming softly as they communicated in frequencies beyond human hearing. Around them, the remaining participants watched with intensity, some recording the unprecedented events for their academic archives. Finally, the chief evaluator addressed the hall. "After 93 cycles, the unsolvable has been solved. Participant 4261, Maya Chen of Earth, has demonstrated an approach that our assessment systems classify as primitive pattern recognition, yet has achieved what advanced cognitive methodologies could not." The announcement was met with a mixture of reactions. Some participants emanated signals of respect, others disbelief, and a few, particularly the Erixian collective, continued to transmit frequencies of dismissal. "This outcome necessitates revaluation of our fundamental assumptions regarding cognitive evolution," continued the chief evaluator. "The academic council will convene immediately to discuss implications." As the chief evaluator spoke, Maya noticed something unusual happening to her completed hypercube. The solution, previously rotating in stable harmony, began to shift. New nodal connections formed, dimensional pathways realigned, and the entire structure evolved into something even more complex, yet paradoxically more elegant. "Evaluator," Maya interrupted, pointing to the transformation. "What's happening to the solution?" The chief evaluator turned, multifaceted eyes focusing on the evolving hypercube. For the first time, Maya observed what appeared to be genuine surprise in the ancient being's crystalline structure. "Impossible," the evaluator whispered, unconsciously echoing the Erixian's earlier dismissal. "The unsolvable is extending." Extending? Maya asked. The challenge was designed with recursive properties, explained the chief, their voice now carrying an unmistakable tone of awe. If ever solved, which was deemed theoretically possible but practically unattainable, it would reveal a second-order problem set. No contingency was prepared for this eventuality as it was considered fantasy. Maya stared at the evolving hypercube. The elegant pattern she had discovered was now serving as the foundation for something far more profound, a meta-solution that extended beyond the original parameters of the challenge. The Assessment Council requests your presence. Participant 4261, the chief evaluator announced. This development exceeds standard protocols. Maya's platform began to move, guiding her toward a previously unseen doorway at the far end of the quantum hall. As she departed, the remaining participants watched in stunned silence. The legendary unsolvable had not only been solved but transcended. Behind the hall's grand facade lay the Assessment Council chamber, a space Maya had only heard rumors about. 7 ancient beings, each representing one of the founding species of the Galactic Consortium, occupied elevated platforms arranged in a perfect heptagon. At the center stood a much larger version of Maya's completed hypercube, still evolving in complexity and beauty. Maya Chen of Earth intoned the Central Counselor, a gaseous entity contained within an ornate crystalline vessel. You have disrupted 93 cycles of academic tradition. Maya swallowed hard. I apologize if. Disruption is not negative, interrupted the counselor. Disruption is the catalyst of evolution, both biological and intellectual. Another counselor, whose body appeared to be composed of interlocking geometric fields, addressed her. We have reviewed your methodology. You recognize that our most advanced challenge, a multidimensional logic construct incorporating 17 cognitive layers, was fundamentally a variation of an Earth pattern matching puzzle. Yes, Maya confirmed. Once I saw the underlying structure, the solution became clear. This raises profound questions, said a third counselor, a being of pure light whose form shifted continuously. The unsolvable challenge was designed to test the limits of cognitive evolution. The assumption has always been that greater complexity in approach correlates with advanced intelligence. Yet a human, a species without neural augmentation, quantum consciousness, or dimensional perception, has succeeded where all others failed, continued the Central Counselor. This suggests our understanding of cognitive evolution may be incomplete. Maya listened, increasingly aware that this conversation extended far beyond her personal achievement. This was about humanity's place in the galactic intellectual hierarchy. I don't think I succeeded because humans are smarter, she offered carefully. I succeeded because humans think differently. We evolved to see patterns in noise, to find simple solutions to complex problems. Precisely, the Central Counselor agreed. And this ability, this cognitive approach, is precisely what the consortium failed to recognize as valuable. The light-being counselor shifted forward. The decision to phase out human participation in the Academy was based on quantitative assessment data, data that measured only certain types of intelligence while overlooking others. An error in our methodology, admitted the geometric counselor, one that would have deprived the consortium of a valuable cognitive perspective. Maya's mind raced. Are you saying? The Council hereby reverses its decision regarding human participation in the Academy, the Central Counselor announced. Furthermore, we propose establishing a specialized Earth Studies division to explore human cognitive approaches. Maya stood speechless. She had come to the assessment expecting, at best, to avoid embarrassment for Earth. Instead, she had fundamentally altered humanity's standing in galactic academia. There is more, continued the Central Counselor, gesturing toward the still-evolving hypercube. Your solution has triggered a cascading revelation within the challenge's deep structure. The unsolvable was designed centuries ago by the precursor civilizations, those who established the consortium before withdrawing from galactic affairs. They left messages within certain mathematical constructs, explained the geometric counselor. Messages that would only be revealed when approached with the correct cognitive framework. Maya looked at the hypercube with new understanding. It's not just a test. It's a communication. Yes, confirmed the central counselor. And your solution has begun to decode it. A message untouched for millennia because no species approached the problem with sufficient simplicity. The implications were staggering. The precursors, legendary beings whose technological achievements still formed the basis of galactic civilization, had left information that only a human cognitive approach could unlock. What does the message say? Maya asked. It is still emerging, the light-being counselor replied. But the initial sequences suggest it contains coordinates, spatial and cognitive directions to precursor repositories of knowledge thought lost forever. The chamber fell silent as the weight of this revelation settled. Maya Chen had not just solved an academic puzzle. She had potentially unlocked access to the greatest technological and scientific treasures in galactic history. Maya Chen of Earth, the central counselor's voice took on a formal tone. The council offers you the unprecedented position of primary interpreter of precursor communications. You will assemble a team, including more representatives from Earth, to continue decoding the message and explore its implications. Maya's heart pounded in her chest. I accept the position, counselor. Then it is decided, declared the central counselor. Let it be recorded that on this day, the 93rd cycle of the unsolvable challenge concluded with not just a solution, but a revelation. Let it also be recorded that this achievement marks the beginning of a new understanding of cognitive diversity in our consortium. As Maya left the chamber hours later, her mind still reeling from the implications of what had transpired, she found herself drawn to the communication terminal in her quarters. She needed to contact Earth, to explain how everything had changed. But how could she possibly convey what had happened? How could she explain that by seeing simplicity where others saw only complexity, she had not just saved humanity's place in the Academy, but potentially revolutionized galactic civilization itself? In the end, she decided to begin her message the way her grandmother had begun so many of their lessons together. The universe speaks in patterns. Today, I finally learned to listen. The signal beamed out toward Earth, carrying news that would forever change humanity's understanding of its place among the stars. And as Maya watched the still-evolving hypercube, now installed in her quarters, as she began the work of interpretation, she realized that what she had accomplished was both an ending and a beginning. The unsolvable had been solved, and the real journey was just beginning.